Good evening and happy Sunday. I hope you are having a restful evening before we go into our work weeks. I wanted to jump on and pick up on episode 3 of Monsters and Monsters of God. Sorry, a little tongue tied there. We left off where Mike, Ray's son, was questioning if he should jump in and take the reins on the family business since Ray was going to serve his prison sentence, and he does, and he opens up his own reptile business. And then when Ray gets out of prison, he actually joins his business and they work together. Well, all the brothers um, begin working together. And this episode goes over the opening and how successful the business was, and then Mike's eventual collapse from making poor decisions like his father. So we pick up where it is about 8 months before Ray is released from prison for his drug and his weapons charges that he dealt with in episode 2. We also meet Michelle, Mike's wife, and she actually gets into when they first met and start dating. And they actually start dating right before Ray went to prison. And Mike, let's just say this, Mike did, and just like I believe Ray, they both went into the reptilian business with pure intentions to really deal honestly with dealing animals and to make an honest revenue stream. They both sincerely went into it doing that, but just that temptation and that fast money got the better of them, and they both ended up getting in trouble with the law. We meet Jeannie, Mike's business partner, and Jeannie cracks me up. Jeannie is very much you get what you see and you see what you get. There's no mincing of words, which she was the man originally helping sell and coordinate business deals regarding the animals, but eventually she was so good at selling, she eventually becomes Mike's business manager, which she, if the person I saw on screen was perfect for the job. She could handle Mike's abrasiveness because everyone the entire episode talked about how off-putting Mike can be because he has a very strong personality, and he does because they show some outtakes in the very beginning, and I don't know how I would take that if somebody talked to me like that. So she was very well equipped for the job. So when they first opened up Strictly Reptiles, and that was the name of his business, and that was intentional again because he really went into this trying to do things honestly. So he wanted it to be Strictly Reptiles because when people saw his last name, they were gonna, kind of squint like, is this a cover for something? So that name for that company was intentional so people would know when he said I was dealing with Strictly Reptiles, that is strictly all that we're doing here. So originally their niche was pythons, green iguanas, and spiders. And Suriname was the go-to place in the 90s, late 80s and 90s to or early 90s to get iguanas. And Mike was so good at what he did. He convinced a cricket farmer in El Salvador to transform his cricket farm into an iguana farm. And it was an instant hit. It was very successful and he did very well. And then eventually, Mike and Reptiles or Strictly Reptiles became the premier dealer for green iguanas. So a lot of the green iguanas that we were buying and selling when we were children during that Jurassic Park phase, which also when they talk about strike when the iron is hot, it was all things in his favor because 1993 when we released Jurassic Park, that created a surge of interest in the reptile industry. So Mike was perfect and he had a ton of business, and that iguana farm created and generated so much revenue for them. So the business was so successful, they needed more space. They needed to stretch out. So Mike, again, an innovator, and he's very good at what he does, and he's very knowledgeable when it comes to reptiles. You cannot take that away from him, no matter what happens in this story. He eventually bought a Frito plant and transformed it into pretty much like a reptilian factory. So part of the factory had the iguanas, and then another had the spiders, and another had the snakes. They said you could like literally hear the slithering when you walked into the snake portion of the factory. Now business was good, life was good, things were going good, but again, it's something in those genes. They got tempted, and the first person was, well, let's rewind it. We also, before they get into the nitty gritty of what happens, we meet Eddie Messick, who is a wildlife and fishing enforcement agent. And he and Mike, there's no love lost between them. Let's just say that. And I'll get more into what happens once I give a little bit more detail. But just to throw his name out there because it is an important name in the story. But he was just talking about and giving a brief description like how hard it was when they first opened up their offices, because Miami and Florida itself was just a problem with illegal reptilian dealing, and they just didn't have the staff. He literally said if you tried to inspect every box and every crate that came through customs, you would never leave because it was just so many animals trying to be snuck into the country. So he talked about the short staffing and just like how easy it was. So even the training and the knowledge of the officers wasn't enough to meet the need, because there's so many reptile breeds, and so alone, just reptiles alone, and to not know them, you could easily confuse something for something else and miss that illegal animal that's sneaking into the United States. And then we also get a little bit more of Elaine, Ray's ex-wife. I don't know why I love Elaine so much, but I do. She seems very sweet. She seems very kind. And she just talked very brief about when Ray went to prison that she decided it was time to end things because he, in her words, had not been very kind to her towards the end of their marriage. And if he's going away, she just figured it's time to just cut the cord. Well, when Ray gets out of prison, he actually keys her now husband's car. So her husband Carlos, who made a brief appearance in episode 2, that is the guy that they confirmed. That's the person who Ray keyed their car, but he stuck around. So I'm like, so Carlos is a keeper. He didn't let that run him away. But Ray did try to terrorize them in the beginning of when he was out of prison. He bought a condo right down the street from them and just tried to give them hell, but he did not prevail. And Elaine and Carlos are happily married and still together to this day. So when Ray got out of prison, again, we said he started working for the family business, and Ray just couldn't keep his hands to himself and not get involved with smuggling illegal animals. It's just an itch he just could not go without. I guess he figured it'd be better to do this than to be selling illegal firearms and drugs. I don't know his logic. But the first person that they hired, that was the very, very beginning of the end, was Dale Morant. And Mike hated Dale, but he respected Dale because Dale was very good at shipping illegal things around and getting what you needed. But by all accounts, Dale was only good at that and going to the strip club, because that was one of their biggest issues, that Dale would go missing around lunchtime. And if he went missing, you know what it was. And in his own words, he loved the strip club. So that's what he was doing if you couldn't find him. One thing that they were doing to circumvent the system was doctoring paperwork, and they were putting on the paperwork that the animals that they were transporting were born in captivity. And then they were doing other things to bypass customs to smuggle in the animals. And our agent comes back and he actually raids Mike's farm or reptile business, and they confiscate his animals, and they eventually have to return them because they cannot prove 100% that the documents were doctored, because this is before, the internet was as much of a daily thing and we weren't all interconnected. So there really was no way to confirm if it was falsified or not. He did get confirmation from someone in Africa, but again, it wasn't credible. So again, they had to return the animals. But this put Mike in his craw, and he was going to get him. And then Dwayne Cunningham makes another appearance, and he's been in every episode because he is an animal dealer that has dealt with literally all the players in the story. He even goes on to tell the story about when he actually smuggled Bahamian rock iguanas, and he made a whole map, and he went to a desolate island and he found them. And from his account, they're not easy to find. It's not like you're going to get to the island and there's just going to be a ton of them. You actually have to look for them. So he found them and he actually smuggled them out. When he smuggled them, I don't know who is the voice of reason in this group, but somebody should have been like, okay, we got away with it, let's stop. But nobody was that person. And eventually, the iguana was on the cover of Reptiles, and that was the dog whistle that was like the beginning of the end. I just don't understand the logic or how you let that get to that point. But that's when the investigators like, okay, we can't use the excuse of being understaffed. We've got to nip this in the bud, because if we don't, it's going to be a problem. So the special division was investigating Mike and Ray and their family business. And then Anson Wong comes back into the story because they wanted frilled dragons. So if you remember in Jurassic Park, the dinosaur where it's like head dressing like flips up and then it like slithers and spits that poison out in the scientist's face, they resemble a small version of them, and that is what they wanted, and they did end up getting them from Anson Wong. When they went through customs, the agents actually painted the dragons. So when they opened the box, when they got to the States, they could put a black light on it, a lot like luminol, and it would glow. And that would get confirmation that these were smuggled. And we know that you smuggled them. You know that you smuggled them. There's not going to be any confusion this time. Everyone's going to face consequences. So they did. They had a raid, and it was so sad because Mike's wife was giving her account that she had just found out she was pregnant, and like trying to get him to like come home so she could like tell him, and he is like, I'm being raided, gotta go, bye. I can't imagine how scary that is and how sad that is. It felt so bad for her. So they did find the dragons. And then just a sidebar, the dragons were coming from Malaysia to Holland, and that's where the paperwork was getting clean. So that was another step that the special agents went through to figure out where the paper cleaning was happening and where to try to get that in check too. So this is February 1st, 1996 was the day that they were raided, and they were able to go through the computers, through the files. They were able to go through more than just raiding the animals. So they had a trove of evidence about everything that had been going on. So obviously Ray did not face consequences for it, but Mike was the one that had to pay the piper this time. And Dwayne Cunningham, he was given 10 months. Jeannie actually was not indicted, and she did not get any jail time at all. And Dale got 30 days in jail. And Dale is still pissed about it. It's funny listening to him talk about Mike. There's no, like I said, no love lost between them, but he had to do some jail. Mike was sentenced. They didn't say the amount of time, but the reason why is because they ended the episode with Mike was getting ready to report to prison, but he also wanted to see if he could make a deal if he provided information on Anson Wong. So that's where the episode ends. I'm really ready for them to get to the Anson Wong portion of the story, because what I've read, and I've tried to read and not spoil it for myself, is that Anson Wong is the the animal smuggling version of Pablo Escobar, if that would be the appropriate comparison. So I'm hoping that they delve into that a little bit more in episode 4. I can't wait till they get to it, and I will be back with a review once it drops on Thursday night at 8 p.m. All right, bye.